Hey guys, my name is Moon Trading. I wanted to create this first video of mine that will go over high and low probability days and how I personally maneuver and navigate through those days. I was asked by my community to do this, and I hope you can get something out of this video that you may not have gotten from other videos, because I know there's a lot that talk about the economic calendar, which I do use, but I have a more peculiar way of doing it as well. So, for example, I have this example here, Thursday, this month, 20th, 2025, right? So it was unemployment claims 8:30. Now, what I do is I gather information from the last decade of price action for this specific news, for this specific month, and that specific week. And the reason I do that is if I just tell you just trade, high impact news, you're kind of blindsided. You don't exactly know the characteristics of that high impact news. You don't know what to really expect. Now, if I tell you trade this specific high time frame news that has a specific character for this specific month, for this specific day, and I give you parameters, you may be able to accelerate your trading even more, without changing your entry model and anything like that. So that's my goal, right? So for 8:30 unemployment claims, I just gathered 10 years of data. It only occurred 5 times throughout a decade. So that's the only, data I had, which is fine. Now, what do we have here? We have my simple checklist. Your checklist could be anything, but I like to have 3 steps for my checklist, make it as simple as possible to give myself the least amount of processing time at all. So for my checklist, 1 hour swing point or fair value gap, 5 minute CISD. It has to occur at 9:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern, and of course, high impact news. So of course, all of that was checked off, so that's great. Now, what do we have here that says 24 bars to 2 hours? That is what I call maximum extension or average extension or short extension. What do I mean by extension is what's the highest or lowest price will go and how far, how long. The reason I track this is because we'll find that for a specific news stage, it will be very expansive, but we want to know how long on average is it expanding, right? Before the move goes down. Now, when you have a large data set, this starts to become very, very useful, right? And then I also have the date and the time for entry. The time for entry, you can place emphasis on it. I do because I like to see what on average, what are the times for entry for that particular news. That will allow me to see, basically when and where I should be looking to enter, which is pretty useful, right? So for this move, it was 2 hours. Entry was at 9:30 CISD. Lasted for 2 hours, and of course, you see it reversed for the majority of the end of the day. All right, so same thing for this. Entry was at 9:45, but look at this, 7 hours and 10 minutes, right? Very expansion based. For this one, there was no trade because there was no high time free swing or PD array, and I like to trade only when that is met. For this, everything was in line, 7 hours and 25 minutes, right? 1 hour and 45 minutes, but all objectives were, hit. So 1 hour swing point, 5 minute CISD, high impact news. So now what I do is I just do some math, right? We understand simple math like mean, median, mode. I'm just looking for the shortest maximum extension hold time, which was 1 hour and 45 minutes, the longest maximum hold time, which is 7 hours and 25 minutes, and the average. So the average is taken by, adding up the sum of each and dividing it by, how many you have. So I have 5, and the average for that was 4 hours and 30 minutes. Now, the reason I'm tracking that is because I want, yes, I'm looking at price action to get out of a trade, but I also want a statistical gauge when I'm holding my trades, right? So the way we go about this is, for example, if I'm in a trade, I will hold to the shortest maximum extension hold time and monitor price heavily. I don't want to see any invalidation of anything, right? If we displace beyond that time, then I'll be looking towards the average, right? That's the next tier on the pyramid. The average is 4 hours and 30 minutes, right? And then if we surpass that, then the longest trade, which is the longest maximum hold time, will be what I hold to, which would be 7 hours and 25 minutes. So let's give you an example of what happened on Thursday. This is what happened. Swing point, fair value gap, 5-minute CISD. Now, what happened that day last week? We only met our maximum hold time of the shortest maximum extension of 1 hour and 45 minutes. Right after that, price just reversed and basically was one-sided for the end of the day. So that just gave you, of course you could look at price action too and see that. You don't want to see some type of invalidation, such as a 5-minute, 15-minute CISD, and after you hit a 1 hour swing point or whatever it is, you don't want to see that, right? But that just gave you another added layer of confluence when it comes to holding your trades, because that's very important. Let's go on to the next example. This was Wednesday on the 5th, ADP non-farm employment change, ISM services PMI. So same thing here, right? 5 hours and 25 minutes, you're noticing. You're noticing 5 hours. You're noticing another almost 2-3 hours. You're noticing 6 hours. You're noticing 40 minutes, which is very, very low, right? Now, I had some caution for this particular news day. Why? These were my cautionary standpoints. I had mentioned in my group, when ISM PMI and ADP non-farm employment change come together, the day can be extremely consolidated and low probability. Meaning all those days you saw here, they were merely ISM services PMI. There hasn't been a day in the last decade in the March time where we have had ADP non-farm employment change and ISM services PMI in the same exact day. There's only been one time that has happened, and the day was extremely consolidative. So I chose just not to trade that day, right? Because now we're going against data. So I said I could be wrong, and I'd be happy if I'm wrong because I know there's people trading that day. Well, I went to Twitter and saw Brian Stock, which is one of my favorite, traders on Twitter, and he basically said extremely risky conditions in NY today. And I didn't even look at the market. Then I looked at the market, and I was like, oh, wow, you really wouldn't have made any money. And that's an extremely powerful thing to be able to do. Of course, if I just tell you to trade high impact news, you would have traded this no problem. But I mean, I'm not sure what would have happened to you, but sure it would have been a break even or just L type of day. Now for the last example, we have here, did I mention, this should actually be the third. Let's see here what news day this was. So this was 10 a.m. ISM manufacturing PMI. Let's go back here. So the same exact thing, right? We're noticing this trade is lasting for 4 hours and 55 minutes, 1 hour and 30 minutes, 6 hours and 15 minutes, 5 hours and 20 minutes, 5 hours and 55 minutes, 2 hours and 5 minutes, 3 hours and 40 minutes, 6 hours and 25 minutes, 6 hours and 20 minutes. So on average for that day, we have an average hold time of 4 hours and 51 minutes, longest maximum hold time of 6 hours and 20 minutes, shortest maximum extension hold time of 1 hour and 30 minutes, and entries occur most often at 9:50 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, this is what happened on that day. So we went basically almost exactly to the 6 hours and 20 minutes hold time that I mentioned here as the longest maximum hold time. And then price just kind of reverted right after. Really interesting how that works, right? All I'm using is data from the last decade for that particular month, for that particular day, and news, and it's giving me kind of a very, very precise insight on what I should expect for that day, expansion based wise. A lot of people were surprised this day because of this huge expansion, but I was like, this day, particularly on average, is very, very expansive. Very, very low amounts of time will this day not expand that much. Um, so now let's get into what classifies low probability days. You probably already know. Very short average extension times of under 1 hour, which means you'll get back and forth price actions, news intertwined with each other that affects the overall performance of the day, days before FOMC, of course. Now, what do I mean news intertwined with each other that affects the overall performance of the day? This particular news, right? ADP non-farm employment change in ISM services PAI. When they're by themselves, the news is perfectly fine. When they're together, you have a very consolidative day. Not too sure why that is, but it just happens, right? High probability days are average extension times of over 2 hours, meaning we can at least have one directional price action for that amount of time or more. Obviously, price manipulates into a high time frame PD array, 1 hour swing of fair value gap at or around 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Eastern. That's pretty good. Extremely high probability days have an average extension time of 5 to 6 plus hours, or really 4 to 6 plus hours, meaning extremely one-sided direction in expansionary days in which you want to be a part of. So you can do this yourself, right? Like, you can really do this yourself. I have something called the time vault. You can make your own thing, right? And all I do is, let's say, before the week even starts, I will go into my time vault and let's see, right here, I'll just search March, right? I'll just search March. I have March 2024 to March 2014, right? So I'll look for the particular news that I'm looking for, and I actually just gave this to my group here. You guys get this. So Monday, Thursday, and Friday next week are high impact news. I've already pretty much plotted everything. So I have my shortest, longest, average, and entry for basically every single day for the next week. And next week looks pretty good, right? We have very, very expansionary based price action here. And that just gives me a little bit of insight on what to expect. This could really, really help you avoid certain days, I'm telling you. Implement it. Let me know how you like it. Tell me how this first video is in the comments, what you learned, what you didn't know. And I hope you guys have a great and beautiful rest of your weekend. Hope you have a great trading week up ahead. And yeah.